Not only can the singer promise to model 1520 sew buttonholes, which we just did the video on, now we're going to use the included foot to sew buttons on. So there's a couple things you also need to realize. Number one, we need to cover up the feed dogs. If we don't cover up the feed dogs and we select a zigzag, well, the machine is going to move the stitch forward and continue beyond the button that we're trying to stitch in. So by covering them up, the zigzag will just go back and forth and stitch the button through the holes. Next, I'm going to go ahead and switch from my buttonhole foot. So go ahead and tap the little lever on the back to release it. And the button sew on foot is the little foot with the two blue toes, and then that is also going to be used. We can then see where we're going, and those little toes are going to grip the button. Now, I will tell you, I did not test this out ahead of time, so I'm going to test it in front of you. Which of these three zigzags are you going to use? The center one or the wider one? Because I know the smaller one's going to be pretty narrow. Now I also have two different buttons here, and even though this looks bigger, this looks smaller, you'll notice that the holes are identical. So once we get it figured out, you have buttons that are big and small, but they all have, like 99% of them have the same width. So once we figure out which width we're using, you'll know for future. Now there are buttons, a few buttons that are specialized, and they might require a wider zigzag or a narrower one. So next, let's go ahead and talk about covering up these feed dogs again, so our fabric is not moved while we're sewing. So this little cover actually has these little notches. Those notches sit in the two holes here, but you do need to make sure that you get it on correctly, because if you slide this in and you need to make sure your needle actually goes into the sewing opening. So you can put it on backwards and then it doesn't line up, and then you're just going to break your needle. So make sure that goes in, and it will just kind of pop out when you're done. So that's going to go in. We're going to slide our fabric in next. Now you're going to notice this is kind of a little tight here. So the lever of your presser foot, you can actually lift it, and then by pushing it up a little higher, it's going to not stay there, but it will allow you to get the button underneath the foot and lined up with your needle. So again, it's not going to fit, so lift it all the way up, slide your button in. I'm going to test out the middle size first. I really feel it's going to be the wider one. But here's the tip. You have to make sure that that buttonhole foot comes down, and then this lowers all the way back down too. We're going to hand turn a zigzag, one in one hole, one in the other. I think that medium size is going to be perfect. So you can just go back and forth. How many stitches you take is really up to you. So you can usually do 8 or so stitches are good. Now this one was actually a 4-hole buttonhole, so we can just lift up the foot. Notice I did the front two first. Hand turn, so you make sure the needle goes in the hole. I didn't make it just yet, so I'm going to move the button forward. Check my needle, check my swing. Now they're lined up, and I can go ahead and stitch another set of stitches. And that is how easy it is to sew a button on with the machine. So I was using the middle-sized zigzag, but just in case you have some wider buttons, you may be using the wider one as well. Once you're done, make sure you just pull it up, take your foot off, and then don't forget to remove the throat plate cover here, the one that covered up the feed dogs, so you can get back to normal sewing without any interruption.